Hey, what's up everyone, it's your boy JC. Welcome back to another Smash Edit. Today, as you can see in the top right of the screen and the title of the video, I'll be making King Bob-Omb from the Super Mario series. Now, King Bob-Omb is actually a character that I brought over from my previous roster, or legacy roster as I like to call it, along with a few other characters like Peachette, Inkling, yada yada yada. But out of all of the characters that I could have brought over from that roster, I decided to bring him over because he was the first character that I made to receive a proper speed edit. To give a little bit of context, all the characters that I made before him had completely unedited videos. Some of them were split up into parts, some of them were like around an hour in length, maybe a little less, that's probably exaggerating. But the short of it is, they were all very long, very slow, and depending on your preference, very boring. King Bob-Omb's video was a step closer to the content that you're getting now, so I guess I kind of wanted to pay some tribute to that, you know? And what better way to do that than remaking his render for this roster? A little bit of trivia about King Bob-Omb, by the way. He was also one of the first characters that I ever imported into Blender, second only to Timeless River Mickey Mouse, because, you know, I love Mickey Mouse. I used him as practice at the time, because I was still getting a handle on how rigs worked and how models worked in Blender and whatnot. And he seemed like a simple enough character that was tied enough to my work. So yeah. Speaking of posing, his current pose, the one that you're seeing me work on now, is very heavily influenced by his original Legacy render. However, it also has a little bit of influence from some key art of his from Super Mario Party. In particular, from my Legacy render, I bent his arms and I gave him an angry expression, and from the Mario Party render, I kind of made him lean back a little bit, and I raised his leg like he was about to stomp it into the ground. I like how those elements kind of gel together, because when you put them together and when you look at it as a whole, it kind of looks like he's throwing a tantrum or something. I don't know that much about his character, I don't know how accurate that is, but regardless, it seems fitting to me, and I kind of like the sort of like implications, what you can infer from that. I think it's funny. But yeah, once I completed the base, I plugged it into Photoshop and started doing the texture work. Now, in a general sense, I don't think I found King Bob-Omb as challenging as most of the characters that I worked on before him. Typically, something about the character's pose or the character's design pushes me to think outside the box artistically, right? Like, or maybe intellectually, I don't know. But the best example that I can give, the best and most recent example, is the boyfriend from Friday Night Funkin', right? I didn't think his design fit Smash very well, but I also didn't have many references outside of his in-game sprite, the loading screen, and the Nendoroid. So, rather than just choosing one design to go with, I decided to make my own using elements from all three, and then hand draw a base that I could use in Photoshop, right? That's what I mean. King Bob-Omb didn't really do that for me. However, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think he just came more easily to me because of his simpler character design and pose and whatnot. He did still allow me to experiment with one element that I'm not particularly familiar with though, that being metallic sheen. Naturally, being a giant, shiny bomb, he's got a lot of places for me to work on that, such as his body, his eyes, his mustache, and his crown. Those last two in particular were very notable because making light bounce or reflect off of a sphere isn't as complex as getting it to reflect off of like sharp edges or shapes with multiple curves, like King Bob-Omb's crown or his mustache. It's much easier to visualize how that affects a sphere than it is to, you know, again, distinct shapes like his crown or his mustache. So it gives you just a little more to consider when you're applying sheen or, heck, any kind of reflection to shapes like those, right? I remember in particular being really nervous about his mustache, because his mustache, right? First of all, when I started out, or before I started out, I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be as shiny as his body, or if I wanted it to have like, if I wanted it to look like hair, like Pitt's hair or something, right? Like Pitt's hair is kind of cartoonified hair. I didn't know if I wanted, it's a lot of hair. I didn't know if I wanted King Bob-Omb's mustache to look like that, or if I wanted it to be smooth. In the end, I decided to make it smooth like the rest of his body. But yeah, once I decided that, actually going about shading it and lighting, that scared me a little too, I'm not gonna lie. Even though I think I ended up getting it in one shot, I procrastinated a bit on the mustache because I was like, I was afraid of it. I didn't want to touch it. King Bob-Omb's crown was kind of a similar story. I at first started referencing Peach's crown, right? Which if you look at her reference, it's kind of like a goldish color. Like a kind of orange goldish color. And I started using that as a reference for how to do the shading, the base color, all that stuff for King Bob-Omb. And the more I applied, the quicker I found out that I didn't really like how it looked. Like, aside from the fact that I just didn't know how to shade or light in a way that matched Peach's crown, I just don't think the colors matched King Bob-Omb's design very well. Like, if you look at his old model, or I guess sprites from Super Mario 64 and his current design from the recent Mario spin-offs, and heck, even the movie, he has sort of a bright yellow crown. Not a bright yellow, but, you know, it's more yellow than Peach's crown is in Smash. So, in order to preserve that aspect of his character design, I ditched Peach's crown as a reference and instead looked to my old King Boo render as a reference. The one from 2020. And honestly, I think even though it doesn't really look like Peach's crown, and in hindsight I think I could have made it look more reflective, I ended up with a result that I was far more satisfied with. With all that said, even if I didn't find him as challenging as some other characters, I still had a ton of fun working on him, and I think he turned out really great. And with that said, there he is in all of his glory. Now, if you got this far into the video, I want to thank you for sticking around. And if you like what you saw, consider subscribing for more. See you all on the flip side.